This is the tragic family behind a $500 million black hair care empire, and their story is more heartbreaking than you can imagine. At the forefront is Dr. Nathaniel H. Bronner Sr. This man built the most powerful black beauty empire in American history, from a sidewalk stand outside his sister's beauty shop. Martin Luther King Jr. spoke at his shows. Jackie Robinson stood on his stages. For half a century, the Bronner family's wealth seemed immeasurable. But behind every achievement was a family quietly absorbing loss. What happened to the Bronner family? This is the story the hair show never told about itself. Chapter 1. Born from Nothing. With a long and difficult life ahead, Nathaniel Hawthorne Bronner was born in 1914 on a farm in rural southern Georgia. One of 11 children born to Gene and his wife, a homemaker who kept the household running through sheer determination. Gene Bronner was a farmer who believed in two things above everything else: hard work and education. He built a small library inside their family home so that all 11 children would have access to books in a county that had no intention of providing that access for them. But the land itself would prove treacherous long before Nathaniel was old enough to understand why. Gene Bronner had built something rare for a black man in the Deep South in the early 1900s. He owned a working farm and operated a small-town store, accumulating the kind of modest prosperity that most of his neighbors could only observe from a distance. The Ku Klux Klan took notice. They ran the family off their land and out of town. The Bronners rebuilt on a new farm. And in 1919, when Nathaniel was 5 years old, the Klan burned that house to the ground. The family moved again, this time to Kelly, Georgia, where they built a third farm and made it work a second time. Nathaniel absorbed all of this. He watched his father refuse to stay down, and he filed that lesson somewhere deep inside himself where it would stay for the rest of his life. His formal education ended at primary school because further schooling simply did not exist for rural black children in his part of Georgia. But Gene Bronner's home library had done its work. Nathaniel was hungry in a way that a classroom alone could not have created. He found his way to Atlanta and enrolled at Apex Beauty College, where he graduated in 1939 as the only man in his entire class. Every other student was a woman. He did not consider that unusual. He considered it an opportunity that nobody else was taking seriously. Then he enrolled at Morehouse College, earned his bachelor's degree in 1940, wrote his thesis on cosmetics, and began selling beauty products door-to-door to Atlanta hair salons through a paper route he had built for the Atlanta World newspaper. But before any of that education could produce an empire, the United States Army had other plans for Nathaniel Bronner. In 1941, he was drafted. He served for 4.5 years, returning to Georgia in 1945 with a discipline that military service had sharpened to a fine edge and a clear understanding of what he intended to do with his life. He went back to cosmetic sales immediately, this time under his own family name. He borrowed $200 with his brother Arthur, set up a sidewalk stand in front of their sister Emma's beauty shop on Auburn Avenue in Atlanta, and began selling hair and skincare products to every salon that would let him through the door. The stand became a route. The route became a business, and the business, within a matter of years, would become something none of them had fully imagined when they were counting coins on that sidewalk. Chapter 2. The $200 Loan and the Show That Changed Everything. In 1947, Nathaniel and Arthur Bronner, with the help of their sister Emma, began teaching cosmetology classes at the Butler Street YMCA in Atlanta. 300 people showed up for that first session. 300 hairdressers, barbers, and beauty professionals who had never been gathered in the same room for the same purpose before, all of them hungry for training, for technique, for the kind of professional development that the mainstream beauty industry had no intention of offering them. Nathaniel looked out at that room and understood instantly what it represented. It was not just a class, it was a market that nobody was serving properly. And if there was one thing Nathaniel Bronner understood better than almost anyone alive in Atlanta in 1947, it was the distance between a need that existed and the business that had not yet been built to serve it. The teaching sessions became an annual trade show. The trade show outgrew the YMCA and moved to the Royal Peacock Social Club on Auburn Avenue. Then it moved again to the Auburn Avenue Casino. Then it moved to the City Auditorium. With each move, the attendance grew and the ambition behind it grew with it. By the time the show was drawing thousands of attendees annually, Bronner Brothers had signed a 10-year contract with the newly completed Hyatt Regency Hotel in 1967, giving the show a home on one of Atlanta's most prominent stages. The show would stay in that building for the next 20 years, and by then, it had become something that transcended the beauty industry entirely. Martin Luther King Jr. spoke from the Bronner Brothers stage. Jackie Robinson stood in front of that audience. Dick Gregory and Dr. Benjamin Mays appeared at the show during years when having your name on that program meant something in the Black community that went far beyond hair care. Nathaniel Bronner had built the most important annual gathering in the professional Black beauty world, and he had built it from a $200 loan and a sidewalk stand outside his sister's shop. By the 1980s, the show was drawing tens of thousands of attendees from across the country. By the time it settled into its current home at the Georgia World Congress Center in Atlanta, it had grown into the largest multicultural beauty trade show in the world, attracting over 40,000 hairstylists, barbers, makeup artists, and nail technicians annually, and generating an estimated $60 million in economic impact for Atlanta every single year. But the show was only half the story. Chapter 3: Super Gro, the Empire, and the Man Who Built It All. While the trade show was becoming the most visible face of the Bronner Brothers brand, the real financial engine was the product line that Nathaniel and his sons were building in their manufacturing facilities across Georgia. Super Gro became the flagship product, a hair growth formula that found its way onto the bathroom shelves and kitchen counters of Black families across America the way few products in the history of the ethnic beauty market ever had. Mothers used it on their daughters' hair on Sunday mornings. Grandmothers kept it in cabinet drawers alongside their prayer books and their good china. It was not just a product. It was a household ritual for an entire generation of Black Americans who had never before seen a company speak directly to the specific needs of their hair and their lives. It was followed by African Royale, Tropical Roots, and a succession of lines tailored to textured hair in a market that the mainstream beauty industry had spent decades pretending did not exist at scale. By 2004, the company's annual revenue stood at $38 million. At its broader peak, accounting for the full enterprise value of the show, the publishing arm, the manufacturing facilities, the real estate, and the brand portfolio, the Bronner Brothers empire was valued at approximately $500 million. Nathaniel ran the company with a philosophy he had inherited from his father and refined through 4.5 years of military service and decades of being underestimated by an industry that did not know what to do with him. God first, family second, business third. He woke his 6 sons at 4 a.m. every day to deliver newspapers before school, not because the family needed the income, but because he needed them to understand that no amount of inherited advantage replaces the discipline of someone who gets up before the world is awake. He brought them into the business from childhood, teaching them manufacturing, sales, logistics, and the particular kind of patience required to serve a community that had been ignored by everyone else. All 6 of them, Nathaniel Jr., Bernard, Darrow, Dale, Charles, and James, grew up inside the business the way other children grew up inside their neighborhoods. Nathaniel Sr. had married Robbie, a woman he met at Atlanta University after praying to find a partner equal to the life he intended to build. She raised their 6 sons inside an empire still being constructed, providing the domestic foundation that allowed Nathaniel to spend the years building something that would outlast him. He prayed over the business the way he prayed over his family, with the conviction of a man who believed that what he was doing served a purpose larger than profit. He told anyone who would listen that the money was never the point. The point was to prove that Black professionals deserved their own institutions and their own stage. The money was simply what happened when you proved it convincingly enough. Chapter 4: The Sons and the Second Generation. Nathaniel Sr. had prepared 6 sons for this company, and all 6 of them arrived ready. Nathaniel Jr. was the scientist of the family, a chemist who became the first Black student to graduate from Eckerd College with a chemistry degree, and who went on to develop over 60 hair care products for the company while simultaneously building Century Systems, his own natural health company that grew into a multi-million-dollar operation independent of the family business. He took the product manufacturing division from $200,000 in annual sales to $9 million before stepping aside and pushing his younger brother Bernard into the president's seat. recognizing that Bernard was the one built for that particular role. Bernard Bronner became president and CEO of Bronner Brothers in 1993, when their father died at the age of 79. He was already a force inside the company and outside of it. He had founded Upscale magazine in 1989, a publication targeting successful African Americans that would grow into a nationally distributed media brand sitting in doctors' offices, hotel lobbies, and living rooms across the country. He co-invested in Rainforest Films alongside Will Packer and Rob Hardy, helping to finance the film Toi in 2000, which became the fastest African-American distributed film to surpass the $1 million mark at the box office, and opened the door to a decade of successful Rainforest productions, including Stomp the Yard, Obsessed, Takers, and the near $100 million grossing Think Like a Man. Bernard brought to the family business the same diversification instinct his father had shown in building the trade show alongside the products. He was not content to run what existed. He intended to expand it in every direction simultaneously. Dale Bronner became bishop. Dale Bronner, founding the Word of Faith Family Worship Cathedral in Austell, Georgia in 1991 with a handful of members and building it into one of the most influential churches in the state, with over 19,000 members and 5 branch ministries. He had begun preaching at 14 years old. He left the family business to do it full-time. James Bronner took over operations of the International Beauty Show, becoming show director and eventually president and CEO of the full company. Charles Bronner served in ministry alongside Dale. Nathaniel Jr. continued his scientific and publishing work. Darrow Bronner ran the show's marketing and professional sales division, becoming the person most credited with keeping the trade show relevant and growing during the years when the beauty industry was changing faster than anyone had anticipated. 6 sons, 6 roles, 1 empire, all of them moving in the same direction. But then the losses started coming. Chapter 5. The Losses That Never Stopped. Nathaniel Bronner Sr. died on July 19, 1993, at the age of 79. He had built the business, raised the sons, trained them all for their roles, and then stepped back to watch the second generation take it forward. He died knowing that what he had started in 1947 with a $200 loan and a class at the Butler Street YMCA had become the largest multicultural beauty show in the world and one of the most recognizable brands in the history of black hair care. Bernard stepped into the president's seat the same year. The transition was seamless in the way that only decades of deliberate preparation can produce. The sons held the show within months of burying their father. They showed up, ran it, and kept the doors open. Because that is what he had trained them to do. But the family's losses were not finished. They were only beginning. On February 6, 2000, Darrow Bronner died of a heart attack at his home in Mableton, Georgia. He was 38 years old. He had been the marketing director of the $32 million family company and the show director of the Bronner Brothers International Beauty Show for years, the one most responsible for the innovations that had kept the trade show not just alive, but growing in a changing market. He brought in celebrity talent that made the show feel like a cultural event and not just a trade conference. He modernized the marketing in ways that reached younger professionals who had not grown up with the brand the way their parents had. He was building the show's future while his brothers built its present. And then he was gone, at 38 years old, with a wife and children and decades of work still ahead of him, in a company his father had built specifically so that the family would have something to stand on together. The family buried him and kept working, because Nathaniel Sr. had taught them that you do not stop when things go wrong. You go back to the office. You run the next show. You keep building. You do not stop. Bernard Bronner's investment in Rainforest Films, which had seemed like one of the smartest moves of his career in the early 2000s, became a legal battle that lasted more than a decade. He had invested over $500,000 to help Will Packer and Rob Hardy launch the company and had raised an additional $250,000 from his personal business and social contacts. The first film, Toi, became the fastest African-American distributed film to surpass $1 million at the box office and opened the door to a decade of productions including Stomp the Yard, Obsessed, and Takers. Bernard had helped build something significant with his investment and his network. When Rainforest was dissolved in 2014 without his consultation, and without returning his investment, Bernard filed suit alleging breaches of fiduciary duty, gross mismanagement, misappropriation of corporate assets, and unjust enrichment. The trial date was finally set for September 2024, more than a decade after the suit was filed. A man who had helped put Rainforest on the map spent years in litigation trying to recover what he had put in, while the men who had built successful careers partly on the foundation of his money counted their returns without him. Chapter 6. What the Empire Looks Like Now. Today, the Bronner Brothers International Beauty Show is still the largest multicultural beauty trade show in the world. It runs twice a year at the Georgia World Congress Center in Atlanta, drawing over 40,000 hairstylists, barbers, makeup artists, and nail technicians from across the country and around the world, including attendees from China, Nigeria, India, and Singapore. The stylists of Michelle Obama and Beyoncé have appeared on its stages. The hair battle competition is nationally televised, and the show generates approximately $60 million in annual economic impact for Atlanta. It is, by every external measure, a thriving institution. The company today is led by James Bronner as president and CEO, continuing the second-generation stewardship of what Nathaniel and Arthur built. The product lines BB African Royale, Tropical Roots, New Expressions, and the Bronner Bros Professional range are sold in over 25,000 stores across America and shipped internationally. The corporate headquarters and manufacturing facility operate out of Atlanta. The company employs over 300 full-time and part-time staff members. The Word of Faith. Family Worship Cathedral, founded by Bishop Dale Bronner, has grown to more than 19,000 members with 5 branch ministries, a television broadcast ministry, and one of the most active online ministry presences in Georgia. Bernard continues to publish Upscale magazine and serves as chairman of Bronner Brothers. Nathaniel Jr. operates Century Systems and his ministry outreach. The family, despite everything it has absorbed, is still standing. But the story of what it cost to stay standing is the story that the beauty show stages and the product shelves have never been able to tell. Chapter 7. What the Family Paid for the Empire. The Bronner Brothers story does not have the kind of ending that the Johnson Publishing story had, with a bankrupt company and a family left with nothing to show for 3 generations of work. The company is still private, still family-owned, still operating the show that Nathaniel built from a class of 300 people at the Butler Street YMCA in 1947. The products are still on shelves across 25,000 stores. The show still fills the Georgia World Congress Center twice a year. The family is still in Atlanta, still in business, still carrying the name. In that sense, what Nathaniel Bronner built has survived in a way that most family empires do not. And the fact that it has survived deserves to be said plainly before anything else is said about the cost. But survival is not the same as wholeness. Nathaniel Sr. raised 6 sons to run this company together, and one of them died at 38, leaving behind a family and a show and a marketing vision that nobody else in the company could fully replace. The KKK burned down the family's house when Nathaniel was 5 years old. His father rebuilt the farm. Nathaniel built a company from a $200 loan. Then he watched one of his sons' generation begin to scatter, with some sons moving toward ministry, others toward film, others toward natural health, each of them carrying the family's entrepreneurial inheritance in different directions because their father had trained them all to build things, not just to protect what already existed. And protecting what already existed turned out to be harder than any of them had expected in an industry that was changing faster than any single family could absorb. The Bronner Brothers International Beauty Show has been running for more than 77 years. It has outlasted the civil rights era, the crack epidemic, the digital revolution, the collapse of print media, and the rise of natural hair movements that disrupted every assumption the mainstream beauty industry had made about Black consumers for decades. It has done all of that because a man born in 1914 on a farm in rural southern Georgia watched the Ku Klux Klan burn his family's house to the ground when he was 5 years old and decided, somewhere in the rubble of that experience, that no one was going to take from him what he had built a second time. He kept that promise. His sons are keeping it still. Nathaniel H. Bronner Sr. started with 11 siblings, a burned farmhouse, a $200 loan, and a sidewalk stand outside his sister's beauty shop. He built a company that employs over 300 people, hosts the largest multicultural beauty trade show in the world, reaches millions of Black households through its product lines, and produced 6 sons who each built something significant in their own right. He died in 1993, and the company did not collapse. His son Darrow died at 38, and the company did not collapse. Lawsuits and market pressure and the relentless difficulty of keeping a family business alive across generations could not collapse it either. That is the Bronner Brothers story. Not just the empire, but the price the family paid to keep it standing, and the discipline that Nathaniel drilled into his sons at 4 in the morning on a newspaper route that made paying that price possible in the first place. Now let us discuss in the comments below. Do you think the Bronner brothers have done enough to protect the family legacy for the 3rd generation? Or are there decisions being made now that could cost them everything their father built? We would love to hear your thoughts. Do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to Black Status for more. See you in the next video. Bye.